Hey guys, this is National Master Kevin Yang back at it with another video. This one is against none other than Benjamin, or Benjamin Tang. Or you like the numbers, I'll let you read the numbers. 1927829. I don't know what those numbers stand for, but that's an interesting combination. In the game against Benjamin, I played c5, the Sicilian defense, and after knight f3, I played what is called the Sicilian. Now, I'm going to reveal to you a secret, and your job is not to tell anyone. I have no idea how to play the Sicilian con. Now, I wish I did, but I've been playing it based on seeing Grandmaster games. I don't know actual lines, but I do know that this is a move for white. This is a Maroczy bind variation, and after knight f6, knight c3, I'm pretty sure maybe bishop b4 might be a move. Queen to c7 should maybe be a move, but I didn't know, right? At this point in the game, I was already out of book. I didn't know much, but all I knew were the main ideas. Sometimes in the con, people just play d6, knight d7. Some people, they just bring the bishop to a7, but I didn't know. I just sort of just YOLO'd. So after bishop b4, queen d3, which is a good move, I played d6, thinking, okay, well, I got my bishop out, and I'm sort of satisfied with where I am. But then knight c2 came, and I suddenly grew quite concerned with my position. And the idea is that after bishop takes c3, queen takes c3, I, in my mind, was planning knight takes e4. The problem is that there's queen takes g7, and if rook f8, then could be f3, could be queen takes h7, but things are not looking good there. So I remember thinking, well, can I afford to play bishop c5 and allow b4? After bishop a7, maybe bishop to f4? Like, could I allow that? And technically the answer is yes, I can allow that, but I was uncomfortable doing so, right? Giving our friend Benjamin so much space and more time. So I said, let's just take. And I already knew I was in a bad position at this time. Queen takes c3, castles, and especially because my opponent has the set of bishops, right? And that's concerning on its own. So after castles, I played b5. I tossed it up, saying, well, take, bishop takes. This was my trap, queen to b6. And after bishop to e3, I said, I'll take that, please. So that was my goal. But after take, I was thinking, well, what happens if our friend just plays knight to d4, right? Or what happens if our friend plays knight to b4, right? Am I going to be okay? Because bishop d7, and then after something like bishop to e3, I didn't know if I was going to be okay. I mean, I had weak pawns, I had a weak c6 knight, I needed to go protect it more. It was just so much that was so uncertain. But then bishop e3 came, and I said, well, let's move my queen real quick, because I don't like this line of fire. Knight d4, I said, okay, well, knight takes d4. And in this moment, I said, well, if white plays queen takes d4, I'm not in a good position. Maybe I even have to play knight to e8, right? And I have to develop my way with bishop d7. But at this point in time, I hated my position. I mean, queen b8 was even an option after maybe I could play e5 and bishop e6, but in general, I hated my position. But at this point, bishop takes d4 happened, and I was pretty happy with what the options that I have. Like, even though I was worse in this position, I'm happy with what I have. And the answer is the move e5, because now I get to push b4, and I kind of felt like this queen b3 move helped me. It helped me because now I get to develop my bishop to e6 with a tempo, and you usually don't want to do that. Usually queen to d2, like after bishop to e6, I was thinking, well, queen takes d6, right? So then things would be tricky for me. So if queen to d2, I would have thought about rook to d8 and then playing bishop to e6 or playing d5, but in general, I thought that queen to d2, eyeing d6 was the way to go. Now, it's sort of like before. It's like queen takes d4, eyes d6, and d6 is one of those weaknesses that it doesn't look like a weakness, but it is a weakness. But here, I get b4, I get bishop e6, bishop c4, even better, because now I get to push d5, and all of a sudden, my weakness on d6 is gone. Pawn takes, knight takes, so I wanted to keep things tricky. Now, if this was a normal game, I would have thought about queen takes d5, because if queen takes b4, I could have thought about, number one, rook to b8, and number two, just taking on a2 right away, right? So I had my options, but I played knight takes and rook to c8. I saw some opportunity here. Rook to e1, which apparently is brilliant. I just don't know why. And here I considered the move knight to f4. Rook takes e5, and I was thinking, well, do I have a way to go? I was like, I want to play knight d3, but there's no way to go. And I should have played this move, because here I have knight to e6. And all of a sudden, the pressure on the c5 bishop might be too much after I threaten rook to a5. So, in this position, I instead played rook a5, thinking, if rook takes e5, I know that I can't take away because there's queen takes c5, and there's back rank mate, right? So I knew that. At this position, I knew that rook takes e5 was a thing. What I didn't know is whether I had enough to get this bishop, right? So my goal was to play either knight to d7 and threaten the two pieces, or play queen to c7. And I figured that in this position, white really can't do anything to stop that. However, I looked at rook to d1. Well, the engine says rook to d1. I didn't think about rook to d1. And I said, well, if queen to c7, then white gets queen to d4. And this was what I missed. I missed the simple move, queen to d4. Now, in this position, it might not be possible. No, it is possible. It is possible. I was thinking h6, and later I want to play either queen d7 or knight d7. But after knight f6, rook to c1, I played h6 to say, well, I don't want to deal with any back rank issues because it might be a problem. Queen to b3, and now I played queen to c7, saying, if you take on b4, I'm going to take on e5, and after queen takes a5, I'm going to play knight to d7. Now there is complete pressure on this c file, and after b4, I was thinking, well, I'll take, and even with the rook, yes, you might be like, well, can't we just take with the knight? And the answer is, you can. And afterwards, rook takes c5 leads to queen to e1 checkmate. But then there's the move queen to a3, saying, well, I did not have to take on c5 right away. Because now, if the knight ever backs up, the rook takes the rook. So that would have been tricky. And my idea is rook takes c5, queen to e1 checkmate, and if pawn takes c5, queen to e3 with a double attack, right? So things were looking okay for me. And I was thinking, okay, well, it looks tricky, right? But here, I think after rook c to e1 and rook takes c5, rook to e7, I just wasn't sure again, So I saw rook c to e1, but I was like, well, there's gotta be a way to stop it, right? And turns out it's hard to stop it. Like, the engine suggests knight to e4. Like, what the heck is going on? Rook takes e4, rook takes c5, rook to e7, have to see rook to c1, and queen to c5. And I'm like, whoa, what? I have to see all that? But in the game, rook to e7 happened, because it's very hard to find a move sometimes, and I decided I'll take the two rooks. I'll play knight to d5, and here I get some play. Knight takes b4, rook c2, and queen to f4, because if b4 is played, I get these two pawns, and after all, the two rooks are pretty strong, right? Queen to f4, and take, and rook to g6. I make it an important point to not trade, or to not just go for the draw, because rook takes h2 leads to queen f5, king g8, queen c8, and there is no way of avoiding the draw. Queen d7, king f6, queen d6, king f8, queen d8. So I don't want the draw, and I play rook to g6, threatening rook to f6 check, and rook takes h2. Queen f5, rook takes, and this is a complicated endgame. And this is where I'm going to leave off for the next video, because this is an interesting endgame that we'll see how it plays out. But in the end, I did lose on time. I got sort of lucky, so stay tuned, and I'll see you next time.